I promise it is not my intention to only upload episodes every 4 months now. Hi, my name is Naomi. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Mosaic in Progress. I had an episode recorded. I recorded the full episode. The topic was social media, and I cannot get it uploaded. I used GarageBand and the new microphone and headset that my husband got me, and didn't really know what I was doing, and tried to figure it out and kept trying to figure it out, and it turns out I recorded it the wrong way, and there is no way that I can figure out to get this formatted correctly to upload it, and I think it worked out for the best. Because while social media is a great topic to discuss, and we're going to talk about it a little bit in today's episode, mostly what that episode was me trying to get my story told. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today too. So the important thing that I really think needed to get put out there from the social media episode is two things. One is that I was calling out the company Adore Me, which, if you don't know, is now owned by Victoria's Secret. I didn't know this until a few months ago. Adore Me is a lingerie brand. I've bought from them before. They're really good quality products, at least what I've bought from them in the past, but the quality seems to have kind of gone downhill over the last year or so, and I would guess that the reasoning behind that is that they were bought out by Victoria's Secret. They recently, on their Facebook, posted some content that was, everything from a company like that is an ad. It wasn't exactly an ad, but basically it was an ad. And it was making fun of a woman, which was really surprising because Adore Me has always prided itself on inclusivity with sizing and inclusivity with their models, and the opposite of internalized misogyny. And I was like, what is this? Where is this coming from? And then I found out they'd been bought out by Victoria's Secret, and then it made sense. But it was from a reality show that I don't follow. Apparently, there was a woman who said that people told her she looked like Megan Fox. And it had a picture of this ugly, uncomfortable looking white bra that looked like you bought it from Kmart in the 90s, and it had, in quotation marks under it, "People tell me I look like Megan Fox," and then it had a picture of one of their bras, and under it said "the actual Megan Fox," and people were absolutely livid about it. And their response to it was first to limit comments on the post, then to start hiding comments on all of their posts because people were commenting on every subsequent post like, why haven't you addressed this yet? Then they just deleted it. There was no apology, no explanation. It just absolutely zero response at all, just bury it. And I think this is one of the things that's a problem with social media on multiple fronts. One is that people feel empowered to be bullies and to dehumanize people and not think about it or care about it, and to suffer very little repercussions from doing so. And the other is that it's so easy to just pretend like something didn't happen by just deleting it and then moving on. And that's what they've done because people quit commenting. Excuse me one moment. My cat is trying to bust out of a cabinet that she chose to get into. One moment. Sorry, I have no idea if that audio actually got picked up or not. She can be very demanding and needy sometimes, and her latest thing is that she likes to get into cabinets, and she's not very good at opening them, so it's just repetitive banging of the cabinet while she's trying to get into it or out of it. And I wanted to stop her from doing that, so hopefully it didn't get picked up on the audio, because as I mentioned earlier, I'm not good at audio editing yet. At any rate, social media, people are mean on it, and they're not mean in the way that they are in real life. As a general rule, there are obviously exceptions. There are some people who will be mean straight to your face, but for the most part, people are not going to say the things to your face that so many are comfortable saying on social media. And I've dealt with this recently with some friends and acquaintances that I know in real life who have been absolutely vile to me on social media. And then I'm like, you would not say this to my face. We hang out all the time. You know me. You would not say this to my face. If you wouldn't say it to my face, don't say it on my Facebook. Which was a big part of the episode that will never be uploaded, was just my needing to be seen or heard or tell my side of the story, which I think is the other message that needed to come through with that can be better discussed in this episode, is that a lot of our use of social media is just us needing to be seen or heard or tell our side of the story. And I think that's why social media just seems to be the hotbed of drama, is because it's like the little us, the little me, the little you, the little whoever, that inner child that's like, he took my toy away on the playground or whatever, and needing for our feelings to be validated and for our side of the story to be heard. And so we have this platform that anyone can use. So that's what we use it for, is for our egos, basically. And I feel like so many people, like, you hear the word ego and you think narcissist or arrogant or whatever. And while certainly those are things that can be associated with ego, our ego is just our sense of self. It's how we perceive ourselves and how we want to present ourselves to the world. And I think that is a big part of what social media is used for, is just the appeasement of the ego. It's giving it what it needs, whether it's, I need to have the perfect angles and filters before I post a picture so that everyone thinks that I'm this, standard of beauty perfection, and I can't let anyone know that I have flaws, or whether it's, I have to tell everything that happened to me and make sure everyone knows I'm not the bad guy, or, whatever it is. Whatever it is that we have our insecurities about, or the stories that we don't want told, or the stories that we do want told, that it's how we create the self that we want to exist, that we want other people to believe is the totality of us. And it's really easy to fall into for people who may have bullies or abusers in their present or past and have dealt with past trauma. I know for myself, I never felt like I had a voice when I was growing up. And it was, no matter what had happened, no matter what I had been through, no matter who had hurt me, it was like my version of the story didn't ever matter. My side didn't get to be heard. And so I have a really big desire constantly, whenever there is conflict, to over-explain and to very loudly broadcast my side of the story, whatever it is. And that has never served me well. and yet I still keep doing it. And it's a thing that is very common for people who have felt silence to want to share their story, either from the past or whatever is going on in the present. When I've in recent times dealt with bullies or with people just trying to create a narrative about me that just isn't accurate, I have felt this really strong desire to just let everyone know my side of the story, anyone who might possibly be involved. And it didn't help me. It didn't make me feel better. It didn't fix the problem. It didn't resolve the conflict. It just kept it alive in my mind and kept me searching for this feeling of justice and fairness that in reality just doesn't exist in the world. And I think that social media can be very toxic for dealing with issues like that, because we think it's the fix for it. We think, oh, I finally have a voice. But it keeps us stuck in that mentality of having to tell our story and having to try to convince people that we're the ones in the right and the other person is the villain, or whatever it is. And it serves, unfortunately, as a more of an anchor keeping us drowning than it does as a life raft to get us away from the problem. And this is why I say it is the episode that will never be uploaded, because the entire episode was really just me going, I'm gonna be vulnerable, I'm gonna tell all the bad things that I did, but it was really like just me trying to get out my side of the story and needing some kind of validation that, like, no, I really wasn't the bad guy in this scenario. Or just to be able to have my side of the story told, because certainly my name has been dragged through the mud by people telling their side of the story about me. And it's one of the things that I admire a lot about my husband, is he is willing to have his name dragged through the mud to have his peace. He doesn't need to tell his side of the story. He doesn't need to correct people when they talk bad about him. And he'll let people believe whatever awful thing they want to believe about him to just have his peace. And he says, you know, if somebody wants to say something bad about me, if somebody wants to believe something bad about me, well, they weren't a very good friend in the first place. And it is a thing that I admire about him and have a very difficult time implementing in my own life. But it's a good way to live if you want to have peace. It's a difficult way to live if you feel like you need to be heard. And needing to be heard, and this was a very difficult truth for me to accept, is just needing other people's validation. It's living by other people's opinions. And I didn't realize that for a really long time. It's just like, no, I just want my side of the story to be told. I feel like my voice is important. To who? To who needs to hear it? You know your truth. You can believe your truth and live your truth without anybody else accepting it or even hearing it. The need to be heard is a need for validation. And it is pretty uncomfortable when you have lived the majority of your life with someone else making your decisions for you, or at the very least judging your decisions and punishing you for them if they were not the decision they would have made, to be okay with being disliked or people not understanding you or even just people not knowing. And realizing that everyone's just living their own experience, their own perspective, their own perception of reality, and so are you. And so to try to convince someone else to see things from your perspective when they can only ever see things from their own perspective is an effort in futility. You can try to empathize with people, and you can hope that people will empathize with you. But to live in such a way that you are basing decisions or making decisions based on what other people think or how you will be perceived is no way to live a life. And that's not to say that you should never care how your actions will impact other people, or that you should live in isolation. But it's important to note the distinction between living in cooperation with others and living based on others' standards. And when you insist on having your side of the story told, you're living based on other people's standards, because what you're looking for is their validation. You're looking for their approval, you're looking for their understanding, whatever. It's based on how other people view you. And there are two things that I remind myself of frequently. And one is from the most evil man in the world, Aleister Crowley. And he wrote, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." And it gets misinterpreted and misconstrued and misunderstood a lot, but his whole premise was basically that whatever makes you happy is why you're here. And the things you do that make you happy are the things you're supposed to bring into the world. That your purpose is pleasure, essentially. He was not the originator of this idea. He just put it into words that people liked to repeat. And the other one is from Aidan Watcher, who I've mentioned, I think, quite a bit on this podcast. And I don't remember which of his books it was in. I feel like it might have been the first one, which I get the titles mixed up. I think Changeling was his last one. Weaving Fate, I think. Yeah, Weaving Fate was the second one, and Six Ways was the first, I believe. I have that backwards in order. So I think it was 6 Ways, but he talks about believing what works for him. And his if a belief doesn't work for me, then I let it go. Which ties in a lot to the idea that a belief is just a thought that you continue to think. You know, you don't have to continue to think something if it's not working for you. If it does work for you, then sure, by all means. But to continue to think a thought that is at odds with your life or how you want to live your life is just punishing yourself unnecessarily. And a really good example of this is from before I left the church. I had a friend who was my best friend for over 10 years and then decided she didn't want to be friends with me anymore. And a big part of the reason she decided she didn't want to be friends with anymore was because I was living in opposition to my beliefs. And she didn't know how to help me, and that's not her responsibility, it's not her fault, it's not her problem. but I was constantly coming to her with these feelings of guilt and just be feeling torn between one decision or the other and feeling confused. And I think she didn't realize that there was an internal crisis of faith going on within me, because even I didn't realize that that was going on. And so she was constantly frustrated with me, like either live this way or live that way, but stop making yourself feel guilty about it. And it took years before I stopped making myself feel guilty about it. Because I was raised in purity culture and having sex is bad. In fact, so bad that women who get married and have sex after they're married still feel guilty about it because they're not supposed to be thinking these thoughts. Purity culture is bad, y'all. We'll talk about it in another episode. I've talked about it before. I'm sure, it being Pride Month, it's going to come up again soon. Because it has destroyed women and children and families and men, and it's just a huge blight on society. But that's a topic for another day. Point is, I was feeling bad for having sex, but also wanted to have sex. And her thing that she would always tell me is, if you want to be a hoe, but don't make yourself feel bad about it. Which was not helpful advice for me in the headspace that I was in the time. But that was my perception of reality that I was in at the time, was that I was doing something bad, and I felt guilty for it afterwards, but I didn't feel guilty during, and there was something wrong with me or whatever. And this is an interesting thing to get into as well, is the way that our perception shapes our perspective. And those sound like the same thing, but they're not. I, for a very long time, thought that all feminists hated men because I was raised right evangelical Christian, conservative. And I never heard them called feminists. They were always called feminazis. And in my life, I have only met exactly one person. And I'm not saying there aren't others that exist. I'm saying, in my experience, I have met exactly one person who I would describe as a feminazi, in the way that I was brought up to believe that feminists really don't care about equality. They just want to subjugate men. They just want to be the ones in control and in charge, and if it were up to them, men would be wiped off the planet, and they hate everything to do with femininity and motherhood and blah, 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 blah. All the things that people like to say about feminists who hate feminism. I've only met one woman who actually fits that description. That's not what feminists are. That's not what they want. As the vast majority of them do just want equality and to be treated on the same level as men and to have the same rights and pay and etc. But my perspective of feminists for a very long time was just these man-hating, bitter people. And because of how my lens had been shaped, my perception, and realizing the older that I got and the more experience that I got, that not only was that not what feminism was, but that also I was a feminist, was just absolutely wild for me. And perspective and perception is a concept that I've been just kind of obsessed with lately. I've been reading this book called Loving What Is by Byron Katie. I was really excited about this book. the recent course that I took. It's called Relationship Alchemy. It's basically like a really intense shadow work. I think I may have mentioned it in the previous episode. It was a really good course. It was very helpful. It really helped me challenge my perspective and my perception of things and helped me heal a lot of past trauma. And the facilitator mentioned the work of Byron Katie a lot and started a book club for this book, Loving What Is, just sort of as a continuation of the coursework in a way. And I was really excited about it. I've heard the book mentioned on the House of Herbie podcast quite a few times, and I was really excited to just dive deeper into this idea of just radical acceptance. And then I read the book. I'm almost done with it now, and I have mostly hated this book. I really like her method of inquiry. I love the 4 questions that she has to challenge your way of thinking. And it's all about just kind of challenging your perception of things, challenging your view of reality. Like, do you have to hold on to this thought? But there's so much in it to me that just kind of defies logic and feels really dishonest. And as I've discussed it with some friends, I just feel like the whole philosophy behind it is just fully delusional. Like, you just have to suspend reality to subscribe to the thinking. And this is my perception of it. There are so many people who love this book and who love the work that she does. And I think so much of it is really good, being able to, challenge yourself and question your thinking. But the application of it and the philosophy behind it, to me, are really delusional. And for example, she says some things like, you're always okay now. The only time you're not okay is when you're living in the past or you're living in the future. You're always okay in the moment. And I think that is very delusional, because I have been through some really horrific traumas. And I can say objectively that when my dad was beating me with a tube of sex, I was not okay in each moment. And the sexual traumas I have been through, I was not okay during the time that it was happening. And I read through, she has transcripts of where she does this work with people at these different seminars or whatever. And she did this work with someone who had been beaten by his father. And she's like, you're okay in the moment. Go back there. You're okay there. Okay, your dad's about to hit you. He hits you. You're okay still. I'm like, no. Like, this is just suspending everything that we know about human pain receptors and the human body. And it's like, okay, well, maybe if you want to say that your brain is your only experience. And that was the thing that I got from the last part of the book that I was reading, is just kind of that I think, therefore I am philosophy. That if you're not thinking a certain thing, then you're not. And I think it's a really good method on a surface level to get rid of your suffering. But I think that if you are not the kind of person who can just suspend your belief in what is in reality, it's gonna be a really hard concept to implement, to be able to say, oh yeah, I'm fine while I'm being beaten. Because you're not, and nobody is. And you can heal from something, and you can forgive people, and all of these things. But it has been the absolute most frustrating book for me to read. And I'm curious if any of my listeners have read it. And if you have, I want to hear from you what you thought of it, how you reacted to the book. because it has just infuriated me. There's one part where she talks about decision making. There was a woman who had her money in the stock market, and she was like, you don't have to make decisions about it. I never make decisions. And I was like, I don't know if that's true. And she was like, no, I'll come home and I'll see there's all these dishes to be done and laundry to be done and bills to be paid and the dog's water bowl needs to be cleaned now, and I could get mad about it or not. And that, okay, sure. With you so far. You don't have to get mad about stuff needing to be done. You can just do it. And she's like, and I will just go and I'll just stand in front of the kitchen sink. And she has this whole thing like, that's all you do in life is lie down, sit, or stand. And I'm like, there are other things. There's walking, there's stuff with your arms. There's so much more than just walk, sit, or stand. Like, you're not a passive creature. But that's her whole thing. All you do is stand, sit, or lie down. And so she said, I'll just stand in front of my sink, and then I'll do one dish, and then, another dish. And before I know it, the dishes are done, and one bill, and then the next bill. And before I know it, the bills are paid. And I don't have to be angry about it. I don't have to worry about whose job it was to do it or how it got done. I can just see that it got done. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't have to worry about how it got done? You did it. And she says she doesn't make a decision. But you make a decision to do the one dish and to keep doing one more dish. And I'm going off on a tangent about this book because I need someone to talk to me about their feelings about this book. If you have read it, please send me an email, mosaicandprogress@gmail.com. I need someone to talk to me about this book. It has me so fired up. I was so excited for this book. And every new passage I read, I'm just like, this woman is completely delusional. Her entire reason why she is fully at peace is because she is delusional. She is completely suspended all logic, all meanings of words, and just completely, absent from reality. And she says she's a lover of what is. This is a whole thing. She keeps, I'm a lover of what is. I'm always a lover of what is. You know that whatever is happening is supposed to happen because it's what is happening. If it is happening, then it was supposed to happen. And she talks to this woman who was like an environmental activist or whatever, and she was like, oh, if I, accept what is, then I'm not going to be angry anymore. If I'm not angry anymore, then I'm not going to do the work, to change the environment. And I am on board with saying you don't have to be angry about stuff. I am on board with saying you don't have to get fired up, stressed out about things to make a difference. You can just care about it and do the thing. But she tells this woman, okay, you're walking in the desert and you see a tin can. Why would you be angry about it? I know it's supposed to be there because it is there. So if it's supposed to be there, why would I be angry? And then I can just pick it up. And I'm like, no, why would you pick it up if it's supposed to be there? And you can say, oh, it's because I want to pick it up because I think it looks better without that, or I don't want this to happen. But you're still not accepting the reality that that's what is. You're not okay with what's happening, or you wouldn't change it. And it's, I'm trying so hard to wrap my head around this woman's philosophy. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's like, you love your body and then, you diet or exercise because you love your body and you want it to be healthy, not because you hate it and you're trying to change it. But that's still, I'm trying to take care of my body, not, I guess you could say I'm trying to take care of the earth and I'm not going to hate that, but it's still, your body is what it is in and of itself. It's not something separate outside of it that has gone into it like a tin can in the desert. If anyone understands this, I'm serious, please email me. I'm losing my mind reading this book. It is the most frustrating book I have ever read that is not a work of fiction. I've read a lot of fiction books that I had to read for English class and stuff in college, and I was just like, this character is stupid. This feels like that. I'm just like, ma'am, what's happening? I don't understand it. And I'll be honest, I got very triggered very early on in the book because she speaks to a woman whose father had molested her. And like me, she did not remember that her father had molested her until she was in her early 30s. She had suppressed the memory. And so she's doing this work with the woman, and she says, so you really weren't molested until you were in your 30s because you didn't remember it, so you didn't have the experience of it. And so you weren't molested until you were in your 30s, and then you incested yourself. And that was extremely triggering for me, and I can own that. I can admit that. And it kind of put the book into a very sour spot for me, that I was just questioning this woman's whole logic of everything because she accused this woman who had been molested by her father of being the one who caused her own suffering. And I can get behind letting go of the stories and the mental whatever that you do, but for her to say that this woman did it to herself, I feel like was extremely cruel and also very much a departure from the reality of what happened. So I'm going to quit ranting about this book, but seriously, if you've read it, email me. I want to know your thoughts on it. We may do a whole other episode on this book. I don't know. But I think it really does just go back to your own perspective, your own perception, and doing what works for you. Because her philosophy, her method of living, whatever, obviously it's not something that's going to work for me. Or at least it won't work for me right now. And it's important to do what works for you. And what works for you is not what's going to work for everybody else. And what works for everybody else is not what's going to work for you necessarily. You have to figure out what works for you. Your beliefs, your philosophy, your perspective, how you make your decisions. And I really wanted this book to work for me, and it's not. And I think that the main resistance that I'm having to it is that it doesn't work for me, and I'm trying to make it work for me. So, speaking of what works for you, this is a completely different tangent, but I'm hoping that there's someone on my listener list who is going to be helped by it. I have struggled in my adulthood with alcohol. It's a very classic problem for people who were raised in like totalitarian kind of households when it came to alcohol, that all alcohol is bad, and so you didn't learn to treat it with respect, or to handle it responsibly. It was just don't handle it at all. And that does work for some people. It is not a thing that works for me. And every time I have tried to go completely sober, it ended up being much, much worse than when I just allowed myself to drink. So one thing that's working for me is an app called Sunnyside. And if you would like to be more mindful about your drinking, I highly recommend it. This is not a sponsored podcast, but if Sunnyside or anybody else that I'm about to mention wants to sponsor me, feel free. I would love to be sponsored. But Sunnyside has been great for helping me be more mindful about it, and the app is now on Android. I think it was just available on iOS, and you did the text and website on Android, but the app just recently became available on Android, and the app has more than just tracking. It's got like little journal prompts and stuff to just kind of help you be more mindful of your own thinking and your own perspectives and your own coping mechanisms and things like that. Super helpful. The other thing is that I have found some non-alcoholic spirits. There's getting to be a whole lot of those, like alcohol alternatives for people. Some of the ones that I've tried were really gross. Like, I've tried the Ritual spirit substitutes or whatever. I did not like them. I had it in a few cocktails that were good, but like the making of the cocktails was like a lot of work. Because I generally, when I drink straight whiskey or wine primarily. And anything that's beyond that, where I'm having to put a lot of work into it, I'm like, no, I just want to pour it out of the bottle. I want it to be easy. So I found these. They're called Three Spirits. They have 3 different ones, and then they've got some like wine substitute things that are coming, or they've been like sold out or something. But the 3 Spirits, they've got one that's nightcap that you don't mix anything in, and then they've got one that's called the Livener and one that's called Social, and you mix like club soda or ginger ale with those. But they give you like the mouth feel and like the vibe that you want when you're just like sipping whiskey or whatever, especially the nightcap one. So if you want like an alternative, if you're a whiskey sipper like me and you want an alternative, try 3 Spirits. They're amazing. Also tried the Pathfinder and Little Saints. And the thing that I really like about the Pathfinder is they're like, you can have it straight, you can mix it in a cocktail, you can mix it in a non-alcoholic cocktail. Like, it comes with a little recipe book, and there's like, today I just tried the 2 recipes. They have one for an old-fashioned that's non-alcoholic, and then they have one for an old-fashioned that has alcohol in it with the Pathfinder. So it's really good if you want like some alternatives to just drinking alcohol, but you also don't want to just drink a mocktail or whatever. Because let's be honest, mocktails don't hit the same vibe. They're just like carbonated and sugary and sweet. And carbonated drinks with smoking a pipe really don't go well together. But the other one is Little Saints. There's like a non-alcoholic spirit called Saint Ember, I think. And then they have little canned non-alcoholic cocktails. Most of them are pretty good. I really hated the Negroni, but I don't like Negronis anyway. I got it in like a sample pack. But they have a lot of different varieties of flavors. So if you're someone who wants to cut back on your drinking, or if you're sober and you want to try something that's like kind of the same vibe but is not gonna get you drunk, try any of those. And if you're trying to cut back, try Sunnyside app. It's been really helpful for me, and that's a thing that's working for me. I promise I will upload another episode in a week. If I don't, you can all come burn my house down or whatever. This was a little bit all over the place because I'm trying to catch up on like 4 months of not uploading episodes. I have a lot of topics that I want to cover in the near future and things that have piled up from the last 4 months. So lots more topics to cover in our journey of healing and growing. And please follow me wherever you listen to podcasts. Spotify for podcasters has changed a lot of things lately, so I'm still trying to figure those out while also figuring out my new fancy technology. Follow me on social media if you're on that, Facebook, Instagram, and please join me next week on the podcast as we both continue to work on our mosaic in progress.